Hi everyone, this is Leanne and this is From the Heart. And today I have a guest speaker, and it's Dr. Betsy Greenleaf, who works in the United States as a physician. And she, interestingly, has a little bit like a similarity to me. I was a midwife. I quit being a midwife because I didn't agree with what I was recommending my clients. And then Betsy kind of contacted me, and she didn't have to quit because physicians have a bigger they have more choices in their career, but she had to change what she was doing, similarly, like for the same or similar reasons that I had to. So I can't wait for this discussion. I want to know more about you, Betsy. Can you tell us more about yourself?
Yeah, I'm so excited to speaking with you today, Leanne. So yeah, I'm Dr. Betsy Greenleaf. I am a triple board certified physician. So I started off my career in OBGYN. So, and then actually never practiced obstetrics because I like to sleep at night, despite midwives. I mean, you guys are there all the time, but I actually went into urogynecology. So I used to do pelvic reconstructive surgery. And so, yeah, interesting enough, when I trained, we were implanting a lot of vaginal mesh because that was the standard of care at that time. And as I was kind of going on in my career, I started to say to myself, you know what, just because someone has a prolapse, first of all, do we need to be doing surgery on them? And a prolapse is like kind of when some women just their pelvic floor gets weak and their bladder can drop or their uterus can drop or their rectum can drop. And there was a time period that anybody who had that was getting surgery. So number one, I started questioning, like, does this necessarily need surgery? And number two, do we need to be implanting vaginal mesh, which fast forward is now off the market? So I kind of found myself, I was like the anti-surgery surgeon, because I'm like, if it didn't affect your quality of life or your health, then why do surgery that had all its, incredible side effects? So actually for a while, I was completely out of medicine for a little bit. I was teaching and speaking. And what happened then is I was at a conference speaking to a bunch of doctors, and somebody asked me a menopause question. And right around the time, menopause was really starting to take off on social media. And I was seeing people making comments and suggestions about menopause that weren't necessarily trained in how to talk about it or even how to treat it. And I was getting really frustrated. So next thing I know, I blurted out that I was opening a menopause clinic. And so fast forward, that's what I'm doing now.
Wow. Yeah, cool. What do you do at this menopause clinic?
Yeah, so I do it a little bit different because one of the things that I get frustrated with, it's really good that we're talking about menopause, because I think that's, one of the issues is that it was a topic that kind of was just kind of shoved under the rug for many years, or women just didn't really know what to ask, and practitioners weren't even trained in this. I mean, I went through OBGYN residency and I think I got one lecture or 1 week of menopause. And so this was something that I had to teach myself over the years. And now we're starting to see it really trending. I think part of the push is the Gen Xers who are like starting to hit that age, and they're not happy with the answers that are out there. So they're the ones that are kind of pushing this movement and demanding answers. But the problem I see with that is now it's become a big business, meaning that because it's become popular, people and other businesses are realizing that they can sell to women because of it. And so they're not necessarily doing the right things. So I see these like online hormone clinics kind of popping up left and right that are literally just throwing hormones at people. And they're not even like looking at that individual's, the bigger picture. And sometimes they're not even interviewing or talking. Sometimes you don't even talk to somebody. Sometimes you just enter your information online, and next thing you know, you get a prescription from hormones. And listen, if that's, if that's the way you're able to get relief, then great. But from a bigger standpoint, I don't necessarily agree with it. And what I like to do is really look at the person, body, mind, spirit, because if we don't address all 3 legs, of wellness, I think of wellness as like a 3-legged stool: body, mind, spirit. Like if all 3 legs are not equal, that stool just falls over. So hormones are a tool in our toolbox. They're not the answer. And I was actually just talking to some women yesterday who said that they had been elsewhere and gotten hormones and it didn't work on them. And I'm like, well, because the hormones are just a tool. We have to make sure that the body is optimized so that tool works properly. So what I do a lot of times is, first of all, we're looking at the whole person. Big thing is I'm looking at what stressors are in their life, because any stress, whether that's emotional stress or physical stress, because not getting enough sleep, not drinking enough fluids, eating an inflammatory diet, exercise, even though exercise is a good thing, if we exercise too much, it can be a stressor on our body. Any kind of stress or inflammation will not allow hormones to work properly, because they're on two ends of the spectrum. Because we either have our sex hormones, like our estrogen and testosterone and progesterone on one side, or if there's any stress or inflammation, everything gets converted into cortisol, which is our stress hormone. So if we don't look at the whole picture, the hormones that we give to people are just not going to work well. So that's what I end up doing. And then one of my also big passions is looking at the gut microbiome. And for people who might not know what that is that every part of our body has its own little microenvironment, a bacteria that likes to live in that area. And when that microbiome is optimized, our health is so much better. And we're finding out that gut health really has such an incredible effect on our general overall wellness and health. And I could probably sit here and say that 90% of all medical conditions are either caused or worsened by a bad gut. And so, one of the things, I interestingly went through menopause kind of instantaneously. I had a hysterectomy when I was 40, and I was having a lot of symptoms at the time of like moodiness, and I was also getting sick a lot of the times. And fast forward, I didn't realize that I was having a gut problem. And so as I dove deeper into integrative and functional medicine, I found that 90% of your happy hormone is made in your gut. And so sometimes in that perimenopausal, menopausal period, we see women getting anxiety, getting depression, getting mood issues, and they're often just given antidepressants. And they don't really work that well, because it's not that they're necessarily depressed or anxious. I mean, those are the symptoms, but the other problem is that their gut may be off. So I found that, when we fix the gut, everything works better, the hormones work better, and 80% of our immune system is made in the gut. So if the gut is off, we're more likely to have autoimmune diseases and inflammatory conditions and joint aches and pains, which, sometimes people gets blamed on menopause. And that's why sometimes the hormones don't work when they just throw them at people. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a lot of, I was thinking.
I know there's a lot.
What do you do? What are simple things? Because you were talking about stress. And for me, it is stress that affects my hormones, and I'm not in menopause. But I know that's a big factor for so many people.
Yeah.
Kind of no matter where they're at. What are things that you kind of give people? Tools
that's
that
a really
you give
good point. And I actually want to point out, one of the things I am seeing, unfortunately, in the younger people now is they end up getting hormones from doctors because of fatigue and stress, and because they'll test, say somebody in their 20s and 30s, and their testosterone comes back low, and they end up giving them testosterone. And I go, wait a minute, why is a 20 and 30-year-old having low testosterone? It's not that they need more hormones. It's that their testosterone is probably getting converted into cortisol, the stress hormone. So we need to go look at where's the stress coming from. So the simplest and easiest things that I see people kind of overlook is sleep. I mean, sleep is so incredibly important. And I think a lot of times it gets pushed to the side, especially, people are busy, if they're career driven, sometimes if their family, if they're just even home with a family, sometimes nighttime is the only time they can get me time, and they, stay up and binge watch some Netflix or whatever. But when we skimp on sleep, that really affects our hormones. So we're really meant to get 7 to 9 hours ish of sleep a night. And if we're getting, like, for example, if you get less than 6 hours of sleep a night, your risk of obesity goes up 23%. If you get less than 5 hours of sleep a night, your risk of obesity goes up like 75%. So that's a drastic increase with just like less sleep. I have teenagers now, and they've been well schooled in the importance of sleep, but sometimes I see their friends do things where they're like studying and pulling all-nighters. Well, unfortunately, you can't, when you're that sleep deprived, you don't generate memories. So like people that are staying up, trying to pull all-nighters, trying to learn something or memorize something, it's just wasted time. It's not going in there. You're not going to form the memories because we really need that sleep to regenerate. And that's probably one of the simplest and easiest things. Now, at the same time, you might be hearing this and you're like, all right, well, I'm going to go sleep 8 hours tonight. And you get into bed, or maybe you go to bed early, and then you're like staring at the ceiling, and then you're cursing me out because you're like, Dr. Betsy says to get 8 hours of sleep, but I'm in bed and now I can't fall asleep. Well, you can't take somebody that's going to sleep like 5 to 6 hours a night and then all of a sudden go, okay, now sleep 8 hours, because they're just going to be pissed off about that. So I have everyone back up their sleep by either 15 minutes a day or 15 minutes a week, whichever seems to work out better for them, until they're getting that full 8 hours of sleep, or 7 to 9 hours. The other thing is getting off the electronics. I listen, I love TikTok. Sometimes you get in one of those scroll moments. But it's the light from artificial lights and artificial TVs and the tablets and the phones. That blue light that comes out of these devices really stimulates our brain to believe that it's daytime. And so our brain is like, okay, it's daytime, I should be awake. And so sometimes getting to sleep when you're exposed to all these light sources can be very difficult. I know some people ask me about the blue light blockers with the glasses, and they're helpful. The blue light screens are helpful. None of them are perfect. Ideally, they do sell these red lens glasses that people will wear to try to block out more of the blue light. I personally have tried them, and I feel like I'm a vampire. Like, they're hard to get used to. But what I do is I get off my computer. I set my computer limit to be 7 o'clock at night. It probably should be earlier than that, but I get off all electronics about 7 o'clock at night. I will still watch TV, but I have noticed it doesn't bother me as much. But sitting really far away from the TV is a little bit more helpful. And also, I changed my light bulbs in my bedroom to smart bulbs. So the smart bulbs work with an app, and you can set them so, like, in the morning when you wake up and you turn the light on, it has a very bright, like, sunlight light, which helps with you getting up. And then actually at night, the bulb is red because the red light isn't as stimulating to the brain. So you don't want to be walking into like a bright bedroom and then expect to like try to go to sleep. And people don't realize a lot of the electronics that are in the bedroom will emit light. And if it's not emitting like a red light, then that could be disturbing your sleep. So even clocks should be more towards a red light on them. So that's probably one of the easiest to start with. The next thing is drinking fluids. I mean, I tell people all day long, drink more fluids. I have to say I'm guilty of it. I have to sometimes remind myself. It's hard. Sometimes you get busy. But the number one cause of brain fog is actually dehydration. Mm. So, and it's funny, we're seeing here in the United States all these IV bars that are popping up and IV clinics popping up left and right. And I teach actually IV therapy for a company to physicians and doctors. And here's the silly thing. The one IV that works the best on everybody to make them feel great is just normal saline, which is basically just regular fluids. And I'm like, you can get that a lot cheaper and a lot less invasively just by drinking more fluids and not having to go get hooked up to an IV. So, sometimes people ask me how much should they drink. And this is where the idea of 8 cups a day is really probably on the low side. It really should be close to 10 to 12 cups 8-ounce cups a day. You're drinking enough during the day if your urine is clear. That's another good sign. And it doesn't have to be water, because I have had some patients who are like, all right, I'm getting my 8 glasses of water, and then I'm drinking tea and this and that all through the day. It's really just that you're getting enough fluids, as long as it's decaffeinated and non-alcoholic. So you can't drink your wine and your coffee and be like, I'm getting my fluids, because it's not the same. So I am unfortunately one of those people who doesn't really like water. And I do have patients that come in and say that, and I'm like, there's so many different things you can put in your water, even from like fruit, like strawberry, an orange, a cucumber, with some of the other additives that you can buy now in the supermarket. I would tell you to stay away from the ones with the artificial sweeteners, because I've seen people get some inflammatory conditions from them. And the artificial sweeteners, and this is unfortunately we see a lot of times when people are drinking diet sodas, is they think, oh, I'm not getting all that sugar. But they found that the sweet, when we stimulate the sweet on our tongues, it still stimulates the brain to respond to it like as if you were having sugar. So there are some still health issues when we're drinking these artificial sweeteners. So ideally stay away from them, or I always tell people stay away from them 20% of the time. 80% of the time if you're drinking them 20% of the time, 80% of the time, if you're doing the right thing, you're good. So it's the 80-20 rule, like do the right thing 80% of the time, and 20% just, have some grace and just enjoy your life. Also on that list is of things to do for health is diet. Diet is incredible. Like we were talking about gut health, diet is really the main source of our gut health. And in 440 BC, Hippocrates said, let food be thy medicine. And so we're now kind of coming back around to that and realizing the effect of our food on our health and wellness. That inflammatory diet that's filled with sugars and processed foods is really very harsh on the gut, and therefore can cause a lot of disease states, anywhere from heart disease to cancers to autoimmune diseases to diabetes to depression and anxiety. Those inflammatory foods are really a giant cause of that. So I tell patients that your food should fall into 4 categories. Your food should be something that at one point walked, swam, flew, or grew, because Twinkies don't grow on trees. There's no free-range Doritos. So as long as your food falls into one of those 4 categories, it's usually going to tend to be on the healthier side. So, and the other thing is we evolved to have a lot more bacteria in our diet. And that's one of the things that's really important as we're learning about the microbiome and the gut bacteria. Replenishing and supporting your gut bacteria is going to be really important for your health. And so that may be eating more fermented foods. So I have people get at least 1 serving of a fermented food a day. And that can be something like sauerkrauts, kombucha, kimchi. If you don't have problems with dairy, then doing yogurt or kefir, or getting a really good probiotic. Some people just want to do a probiotics, but it's better coming from food. But if you're looking for a probiotic, I have people look for one that's the most diverse, meaning it has the most number of bacteria in there and different types of strains of bacteria. I'm actually in the process of developing one that I'm hoping will come out on the market in the beginning of next year. Or coming out soon. So because there was one that I've been looking for years that isn't out there. So I'm actually having a company make it. So follow me for that. I'll let you know when that's available. But the other thing with the bacteria in our gut that's so important is that just eating the probiotics is not good enough. We need to actually feed the healthy bacteria. And we do that by adding more fiber into our diet. So that's ideally obtained through fruits, vegetables, and grains. But fiber supplements are not terrible if people just can't get enough fiber doing it the natural way with foods. In fact, actually, I have my coffee sitting right here, which actually, I drink decaf, but I stole this from one of my friends. They put what's called sun fiber or benefiber It's a soluble fiber into the coffee, and you don't even know it's there because it's not gritty. It's just dissolves, and it's a sneaky way to kind of add more fiber into your diet. So basically, sleep, hydration, and diet are like the big things that you could go out and make giant changes in your life tomorrow, and that would actually help with your hormones and with stress levels. So
Yeah, awesome. I was going to ask you about the gut microbiome because you exuded so much passion for it, and you just added it in there.
it's actually really, I have to say, the gut microbiome research, and I can spend hours going down the rabbit hole of reading the research, is so incredibly fascinating. And they're starting to realize that our gut may be like the puppet masters of our brains, meaning that there is this gut brain connection, and they know that the bacteria in our gut can affect our behavior. Even like, for example, yeast. If we have an overgrowth of yeast in our gut, yeast likes to live off of sugary foods. And they found that people that have yeast in their guts tend to have more sugar cravings because it's controlling us to go seek out the foods that it wants to survive. So it's incredibly, it's really kind of fascinating. And they're realizing that certain bacteria affect like our body composition. Like in the obesity medicine world, it's been really fascinating to realize, because you'll sometimes find people that like their diet and they're exercising and they just can't lose weight. Well, it might not be what they're doing, it may be what's in their guts. There was actually a really fascinating study where they took mice, and they had twins. Where one was a heavy twin and one was a thin twin. And they basically took the microbiome from the twins and fed it to the mice. And the mouse that got the heavy twins microbiome became fat, and the other mouse stayed thin. And then they switched it to see if it was really true. And the fat mouse became thin, and thin mouse became fat. So really, I think in the future, we're going to see a more understanding of these microbes and how they affect our thoughts and our behavior and our body composition and our general health. So, yeah.
Yeah. So a really big, like a theme that I like to run through my podcast is following our intuition rather than like all these other things that are telling us what to do. The reason why is because I feel that research can also be biased and things like that. And I think that our bodies also need different things compared to another person. Yes, and I know that like we mentioned it to one another, and I just want to know what you have to say about what you know about following our intuition rather than what is like basically black and white for us.
I totally love that topic. And being an empath myself, I'm very in tune to my intuition. But I think everybody has the ability. It's just how much do you listen to it? And it's interesting. I think it's something as children, we listen to it more. And then as we become adults, we kind of logic ourselves out of it because sometimes it just doesn't make sense, like why we feel a certain way about something. But listen even to our language, because our language will be like, our language is what's your gut feeling, which actually is kind of connected back to that gut microbiome, but, and I agree with the comment on the research, because here's an example of how research can fail us. The example is shark attacks go up in the summer. Ice cream sales go up in the summer. So does that mean that eating more ice cream in the summer is going to cause more shark attacks? And so it's the difference between causation and correlation. And we often see this in medical research, is where the people who are doing the research already have an idea in their mind of what they're trying to prove. And so they get results. And do those results really connect to each other? Or are they saying, oh, look, this thing is causing this because we saw it happen at the same time? And that's not always the truth. So I agree. And I think that's where even in medicine, we've lost this art of medicine, because medicine is being really pushed as like evidence-based. Well, there are some things you just cannot prove. And I do believe in that innate belief in yourself and autonomy and that intuition. I had a patient who, it was really interesting. Unfortunately, she has since died, but she just knew something was not right. And it was not in my, actually, it was not even in my specialty area of medicine, but I listened to her and I was like, all the doctors were telling her, you're fine, you're fine, you're fine. She's like, no, something's not right. Something's not right. And so I helped her go down that trail of let's figure out and let me at least test the things I could do. Fast forward once again, she ended up having a cancer that was a very, very super rare type of cancer. But I think if she hadn't listened to her intuition, it would have been a lot worse. I mean, she was actually able to get another 4 or 5 years out of her life, where if it had been left and not discovered, then it would have been a lot worse. And it basically came down to her intuition of her saying that there was something not right. And now that I say that, I think of another story. My mom was diagnosed with breast cancer when she was 49, but she found a lump and was like, something's not right about this. She went and got her mammogram and it looked like a cyst. She went to a surgeon and he's like, oh, it's a cyst. It's fine. It's nothing. And she's like, no, I think there's something going on. And unfortunately, especially women, I think a lot of times we get dismissed as being crazy in the medical profession, which is a horrible thing, because if science can't prove something, then they think it doesn't exist. When it's very valid that you could have a feeling about something and we just can't prove what it is. So in my mom's case, she demanded that the surgeon take the cyst out. And it did turn out to be cancer, and she caught it early. And, that was in her 40, she was 49 at the time, and now she is in her late 70s. So, and has not had problems since. So I think that, and I always tell patients, like, your body better than anybody else. So listen to those little hints and nudges, because there is something going on, even if we can't always prove it in medicine. Yeah.
And then we were also talking about advocacy. And I think that, like, when we have our intuition, sometimes we know that we need to know more, or to make the right decision for us. Because sometimes it is to ask for more tests, but sometimes it's to decline tests, because what will that test do to our health? What will it add to our chart? And then what will we have to go through when it's like positive or negative? And there's repercussions to like further testing too. But anyways, I'm just wondering what you have to say about kind of, because it's a running theme in my podcast, and people are coming to me and they're like, I didn't even know that I could even go to the doctor and ask questions. And so it's just or that you can even decline, or so what do you have to say about advocacy?
Oh my gosh, another thing I also believe in. I think one of the things too is combining that gut feeling and intuition with informed consent, meaning getting as much information as you possibly can to make a good decision. But here's the thing is, I see so many patients that I've had that have come from other doctors and or have primary care doctors, and I'm seeing them for another reason, and they're like, they don't like their doctors, they don't like what's being told to them. And I'm like, why are you staying with them? And they're like, oh, I don't want to insult my doctor, or I don't want to be a jerk, I don't want to be non-compliant. Like, it's your body and your life. If you're not getting the answers that you want or you deserve, then it's time to go find those answers someplace else. So I think, if you're with a practitioner, and it's kind of like dating, you don't want to stay with somebody that you're not connecting with, or marriage. Like, it's time to move on and find your person, and that's going to be even like when it comes to practitioners. And then when it comes to refusing care, oh my God, I got into a big fight. Let me tell you, I was a patient and I refused care. And the nurse practitioner at my gastrointestinal, my GI office, like, she was so insulted and walked out of the room. But listen, I stood up for myself. So she basically, it was over the fact I was getting reflux. and they wanted to prescribe me a proton pump inhibitor, which a lot of times people get prescribed for acid reflux, and it basically prevents your stomach from making stomach acids. And so I politely said to her, I was like, listen, I know you got to prescribe this. I know sometimes when it comes to insurance coverage, you got to check certain boxes before they'll approve the next step. I said, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to tell you to your face, like, you can prescribe this. I will go fill the prescription, but I'm not going to take it. Because in my world with the microbiome, I don't want to affect stomach acid production, because that can actually worsen the microbiome and increase my risk of H. pylori, which is a bacteria that's been associated with ulcers and even stomach cancer. So I try to be like so nice about it. And she got really insulted. She was just like, what? You're not going to do what I said? And I'm like, no. And I'm trying to be nice and giving you the reason. And then she got really nasty and was like, well, then you're going to get cancer and you're going to die. And she stormed out of the room, which is really unprofessional. And I don't want people to be scared of speaking up for yourself because of something like that happening. But if something like that happens, that's the big sign that it is time to move on. Because if you have a really good practitioner, they're going to listen to you, and they might disagree with what you're doing, but it's your body and it's your life. So you have the right to make decisions about it. Their job is really just to give you suggestions and give you the information that's within their knowledge. And guess what? We don't know everything. And I'm finding, unfortunately, in traditional medicine, there are a lot of gaps in the knowledge base. So, and that's why I'm always constantly learning more. And I'm currently on my 4th board certification process right now. So, yeah.
There are clients who sometimes look at me, and then I'm like telling them, like, you can advocate for yourself. And then they're like, but Leanne, I don't know the research like you do. And so just because of what you were saying, like you were explaining to the doctor, but sometimes we can say, okay, I'll take, the prescription and I'll think about it. And then, so like, just to make it simpler for that person, because maybe your intuition, your inner knowing is telling you maybe not. So, or whatever, ask for more.
I think that's a really good point, because you could say no to the doctor, but also, or practitioner or whatever, and say like, well, my no doesn't mean like a hard no, like forever. It means like, this is a no for right now with what you're offering me, because I need to find out more. Yeah. And I think that's really I think that's probably a really good answer, is like, you know what, I'm not really comfortable with this. I need to find out more. I may come back and agree to that. I'm not completely refusing it. It just, or maybe you are completely refusing it. I mean, like, I'm not comfortable, but I need to research it more. I need to find out more. Because I even, as myself as a doctor, I've had people say to me like, oh, I want you to take this, with no explanation of why am I taking that medicine or that supplement. And then when I was able to go and kind of read about it a little more, or found out more information for other practitioners, I was like, okay, that makes sense. But, and I know that's kind of hard, because it's like, you're often going to a healthcare practitioner because they're the person that you're hoping is going to explain everything because they have the knowledge. I think that's probably the other answer, is that if you're not getting that kind of support from a practitioner, it's time to find another one, because they're out there. We're definitely out there.
In Canada, we don't have the opportunity to choose who we have if we have someone.
Oh, no.
But a way to do that is to get a naturopath. And then you have 2 different type of people, like, because a physician's scope of practice in Canada really is pharmaceutical or surgical based.
Yes.
And then a naturopath will tell you to take, like, she'll give you, or he'll tell you to, like, they'll give you the option of the prescription, but there'll also be some other options that you can think of and then choose from there. So that's the way that I like that it works for me, because sometimes I do want the prescription, so.
And, and there's also, I mean, sometimes it's hard when you're kind of Googling the internet and trying to find reasonable sources to read about it. There is a platform that I'm really excited about that's been starting up. It's called Know We Well. It's like no, and then like we, I think, is in the middle, but in well. And it's a platform that's kind of like a cross between like Facebook and LinkedIn, and there's all different health communities on that, and it's really to kind of share and grow health information. So that's becoming more of a reputable source for this kind of information, and so for alternative things versus just Googling it and God only knows what you're going to find.
Yeah, Google is, I always tell everyone, fire Dr. Google.
Yes, I agree. I agree.
Like Google increases anxiety.
Yes.
And so like one of the big things I say is, if it feels urgent or like it feels like fear, that's not our intuition, or our intuition's not urgent.
And unfortunately, from a marketing standpoint, fear sells. So companies that want you to buy their stuff or buy their services, they do it by inducing fear so that there's a sense of urgency, like, oh gosh, I got to get that thing because my life is not going to be good or comfortable or perfect if I don't have that thing. And so, yeah, it's unfortunate, but if you kind of understand that and kind of look at things from that broader picture and go, is this something I really need? Is it, and here's the thing with intuition, which is really interesting. And often I see chiropractors and naturopaths that do this, is what's called muscle testing. And this is something that you could even do yourself. Like you can, like, let's say there's a supplement, and they do it a couple of different ways. A lot of times you'll see chiropractors or naturopaths do it where they put the supplement in your hand. And if they push on your hand, if your hand stays strong, then you're like, that shows that you believe that thing's going to work. There's another way you can do it with a therapy or a supplement, is if you just kind of hold it to your chest and close your eyes, knowing that if you start to lean forward, that's a yes. And if you start to lean back, that's a no. And it's kind of like, it's just a way, it's really your subconscious coming through and telling you what you believe, because that's the thing. I could also have a pill that has tons of research behind it, but if you don't believe in it, it's not going to work. Because there is really that power of placebo and believing in a treatment. So that's another reason why, if you, from an intuition standpoint, if you're not really on board with something, even though they can show you all the information about how it works, it might not work, because you have the power to actually make it not work or work based on what you believe about it. So, yeah.
Yeah, placebo is, yeah, it is a force. Yeah. And so we were, what are some languages that, like, we just talking about fear, but what are some of the language of fear in medicine that you feel impacts, or like narratives that impacts people? Do you know? Or red flags to look for?
You know what? Here's the other thing. So I told you about how fear sells. The other things that sell is, I don't know if I've noticed this, but all of a sudden new conditions start coming up when there's a product that needs to be sold. So they will change, like for years, I don't know, erectile dysfunction is popping into my head, but it wasn't called erectile dysfunction, even though a lot of us have heard that terminology. It didn't get called that until Viagra started coming on the market. Before, it was called impotence. So you'll notice changes in language based on things that need new products and services that are coming on the market to try to sell those products. I'm trying to think. PMDD is premenstrual dysphoric disorder. That was just always PMS, which PMS was premenstrual syndrome. And even then, that was anything that syndrome, a dysfunction, a disorder, like language kind of follows what they're trying to sell. In the menopause world, you can get like a dry vagina, and that used to be called atrophic vaginitis was the medical term. Now it's genital syndrome of menopause, because that sounds so much worse. And then we can sell products based on those names. So I would say watch and pay attention to the language, because all of a sudden these like syndromes and things, it's not that and sometimes they've discovered something new, but most of the time we need to create this new condition and name it something so that we can now have the solution for this problem. that never existed until we like gave it a name. So yeah, that's
Mhm.
definitely.
Mhm. It comes back to like how medicine is like really it's about pathology,
Yes.
and then and sometimes it's not.
Well,
I
there's
don't
no
think.
well, and in traditional medicine, there's no wellness-based model. It's
Mhm.
all disease. I mean, even when we in the United States, we see coverage like for menopause right now. You don't. I mean, that was a big push, but there's not a lot of coverage for menopause care because menopause is not a disease state. So, there was for a long time, obesity was very hard to get obesity medications and stuff covered because obesity was considered like a state, not a disease state. So aging is another thing. Aging is not considered a disease state. So there's not like coverage or focus on like, and I know that right now they're trying not to use the word anti-aging because that's not politically correct now. It's like longevity is more of the terminology. So yeah.
Yeah. You said it right. Yeah, there's no wellness.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
all. Oh, well, now that was the point I wanted to make too. So the Western style of medicine is actually based at a triage. It's based at a wartime triage because when you're in battle, nobody really cares about the root cause of your leg getting blown up. They know you stepped on a mine and your leg's now off. We don't really care about what the cause was. It's just dealing with the symptoms. So it's like, okay, stop the bleeding, deal with symptoms. So that's our Western medical system has been based on just dealing with symptoms and versus fixing the problem. So I think now there's a bigger push from patients who are starting to understand, like, why should I just take another pill or do another thing if it's not getting rid of my problem? And there's some problems we just can't get rid of. Some of them have to be treated symptomatically, but if we can get to the root cause or we can lessen things that may be contributing to it, like your gut health or these stressors or other inflammatory like toxins in our environment, if we can lessen some of those, why not, versus just taking a pill that covers it up. And then you get symptoms from that pill and then you have to go take another pill to deal with the symptoms from the first pill. So, yeah.
Yeah, I see that in that, like, my family that's older, they just end up having so many pills, and then when they see um a specialist, they're like, oh my gosh, we have to remove all these, and they have to like change everything. Yeah, but the importance of like our intuition is also how our body feels. So
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
definitely.
Okay, so another question for you. I like to promote the idea, because from what I understand is quality relating and having people in our lives gives us purpose and affects our health a lot. So I'm just wondering how you do that for yourself, or what you've seen in your clients, and how that's helped them to improve quality relating or grow their community or things like that.
Yeah, that's incredibly important. And in fact, that's part of the three-legged stool of wellness is a body, mind, spirit. Usually it forms into the mind and spirit connection. It kind of goes equally as that sense of community, because I think as humans, we really are very social creatures. And I think this really was highlighted during the pandemic when so many people were kind of isolated and on their own. And even, one of my people that I looked up to, Dr. Ruth Westheimer, who has since passed, I mean, she used to talk about sex, but in the end of her life, she really was focusing on the epidemic of loneliness. Because if you don't, we know that people in general do so much better when it comes to their health, their wellness, or even their outcomes. Let's say, unfortunately, if you're ever diagnosed with cancer, you're much better at going to be surviving and having a better outcome if you have a community around you. So for myself, sometimes it gets really hard to kind of establish that sense of community. I suggest to people that, sometimes church groups or religious groups are very good if that's the way they go, if they involve with that, community groups, finding people, groups that people have the same interest. For myself as an entrepreneur, sometimes I get kind of stuck in my own business and like really get super focused, and you kind of lose that sense of community. So I've made sure that I'm always part of some kind of business group. I've done a lot of what are called masterminds, and I belong to a club called the Global Woman Club, which I don't know if there's any in Canada. I'm sure that if there isn't, there should be a chapter in Canada, but there's chapters all over the United States. But like just getting out and meeting people with similar interests to connect, because I always feel so much better after I've been around other people. Mm-hmm. Like even I have to say, even like when I do these things, like these podcasts and stuff, and just actually having a conversation with somebody else, because maybe you're busy, maybe you can't go meet somebody, like jump on a Zoom or something, pick up the phone. And that drives me crazy. People don't pick up the phone anymore. And I don't think you get the same type of connection through texting. Mm-hmm. Though texting is better than nothing, but and social media, I know sometimes people can feel a sense of community when they find they find an influencer that they follow, and it creates a sense of community when they all support that person. But I don't feel like it's as beneficial as really just meeting with people genuinely, where you're interacting versus just watching or following something. So, and unfortunately, I'm not, even though I love social media in some ways, I think it can be kind of hurtful too. And just remember, like those algorithms show you the things you look at. So I'm going to throw my in-laws under the bus right now, but my father-in-law, because I know he's not going to listen to this. My father-in-law is really like passionate when it comes to his political beliefs. And so his algorithm only shows him things that support his political beliefs, and it's turning him into this like really angry person because he's being shown things that are triggering that anger, and that's going to have a longer effect on health and wellness if you're always like angry and like super, like you gotta, like I said, you gotta build the communities that are going to support you in that are going to support your wellness and not necessarily support your anger. So, yeah.
Thank you. Where can the listener get like in touch with you or follow you or anything like that?
Yeah, so there's I'm on social media in many different ways. If you just look up Dr. Betsy Greenleaf, you'll be able to find me. I think on Instagram and TikTok, I have 2 different accounts. I have a women's based account and a men's health based account, but I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook and all those. The other thing, if you go to the Pause Institute, it's Pause Institute, like menopause, but without the meno on the beginning, pauseinstitute.com. There's a place where you can take a free hormone quiz and you can see where your hormones are. Also, I have a website called the Pelvic Floor Store, where I sell pelvic health products, and I'll give you a code for 10% off. What would you like the code to be called? Do you have like one word that you would like it to be?
Heart.
Heart. All right. So it will be heart, and you'll get 10% off at the Pelvic Floor Store. And I do ship into Canada as long as your postal service is not boycotting or striking or whatever. From time to time, we have those problems. But yeah, so you can find me in all those. And then interesting enough, on a side thing, also for wellness, it's really important to have hobbies. Hobbies are really good for stress reduction. And one of my newest hobbies has been songwriting and producing. Mm-hmm. I'm just now taking singing lessons, so maybe I'll sing my own music in the future, but you can find some of my music on Spotify and Apple. One of them is there's an album called Menopause Memo, which is just a menopause empowerment album. And that's Dr. Betsy with a B-E-T with a Z after it. But then also there's a band called Life Fire, and there's I think 3 albums now out with Life Fire. But I just wrote and produced. I'm not the singer. Someday, maybe. So.
Oh, that's so cool that you do that.
That's been my new
yourself.
hobby. And I found I didn't realize the power of music and how much of a stress reduction it is. And like, it's been able to get me to process things that I never knew I could process. It's been pretty amazing. So I think combination of, and then I will be working on some meditation albums in the future too. I'll be putting those out. So
amazing.
Yeah.
We'll try to put those in the show notes. Yeah, but that's also like the singing thing is especially I find inspiring.
And you know, I know we're wrapping up, but that's something I would basically challenge you to do is find something new to do, because that is incredibly good for brain health and longevity and mood. And so every year I try something new. Like one year it was like pole dancing, which I was horrendous at, but it was a lot of fun. This year it's been singing lessons. So I haven't figured out what next year's is going to be, but I try something like a new activity. And I'm actually really shocked about the singing and actually how difficult it can be. And I'm finding that being able to learning how to use my voice in different ways is actually helping with like memory and brain development. So and anything new that you do can help with that. So yeah.
That's so cool. Thank you so much, Betsy.
Thank you, Leanne. I had a great time.
Yeah. And thank you to the listener.